And today we're here as part of Business Discovery Day in Woodbridge Township. I understand this is the hot shot engineering class. Is that true? That you guys have been in this, you're very interested in this profession? So anything, part of what Business Discovery Day is was to more tightly match the school speakers, the business professionals, into classes that are more interested, and so their presentation is more meaningful as opposed to just walking into any class. So today you're going to hear from two of our engineers and construction experts. We have Jan Fedoziak right here, and we have Michael Hanna. And they've actually brought a model to talk a little bit about what happens in the water business and the water distribution business. They'll talk a little bit about the construction project. The whole idea today is to make this interactive. So if you have a question, you know what it's like to have water from the faucet. That's what business we're in. We're the tap water people. So any type of question you might have about that, feel free to ask these guys. Try to stump them. That's what we're here for.
Not too hard, please. It's still early.
So they'll take it away and enjoy the presentation. Thanks.
Yeah, why don't you?
So while we're setting this up, both Mike and I work for Middlesex Water. My job primarily is in the operations group, so we oversee the personnel in the field. I'm sure you've seen the Middlesex Water trucks going down the road, crews digging up holes in the road. Well, the operations group really oversees the distribution system, make sure that obviously the mains aren't leaking, they're repaired properly, provides feedback to make sure that engineering on their end is planning for the future and looking at operational issues that may occur. Is a main undersized? Are fire flows good in that area? We're working with engineering firms often to construct projects, working with the county, the DEP, the BPU, which is the Board of Public Utilities. Since we're a private company, we're regulated by them. They're the personnel that oversee our costs, our rates, making sure that we're doing the right thing. But when we start looking at the both the maintenance and the construction, we can go from one end of the spectrum to the other. Last year, we went and installed approximately 18,000 feet of distribution pipe in Avenel. I'm sure you saw the large construction project. Kiley Construction was working for us. So the operations oversees, does the inspection of it, working with engineering firms, working with our engineering group. We'll make sure that the shutdowns are properly done. They're turning the valves. Working with the other utilities, gas company, others. So we're going from one end of the spectrum, from just maintenance to building for the future, making sure that our pipes are properly sized, making sure that we have a pipe that's going to last. I'm sure you've seen things rust. You see metal rust outside. This pipe does similar things. So when a pipe's buried, most of it's cast iron, and it actually goes through what's called graphitization. So the graphite comes out of the iron, and it gets thinner and thinner and thinner until it breaks. So we want to make sure that that pipe, we replace it before it breaks and before it starts causing main breaks. So that's part of the reason why we do those projects. Last year we embarked on a project to install a brand new 42-inch pipe to be a redundant main to our transmission main leaving our treatment plant. Because of this, the redundant main, we're now able to take this pipeline down, the existing pipeline down, and inspect it using things like electromagnetic inspections, going through and doing leak detection with a device that will roll through the pipe. Those are all things that we're looking at doing in the future to be proactive. So with that, kind of turn it over a little bit to Mike, talk about our whole presentation here, and also the engineering group, what they do for planning into the future and design of projects.
All right. Well, yeah, we decided, this is a great opportunity to give you kind of a visual perspective on some of what we do. Two major components we have here. Obviously, we start with getting the water from some source. Okay, our primary source of water is the DNR canal. That's a surface water source in a normal canal. So it's going through, and if you guys see any water around here, it doesn't look that good. When you first see it, it may look something like this. Okay, it's got a little dirt in it. It's got biologic stuff, whether it's animal matter. Unfortunately, all animals have to go to the bathroom, so that's in there as well, and that type of stuff. So even the wells that we use in our system, the water's not perfectly clean and ready for human consumption. So it's got to go through a process to get that ready before we can actually get it into the pipes and out to our customers. So what I've got here is kind of a mock-up of a very crude water filtration system, and it works in the top down. I'm going to use this a little bit, although it's not the best thing. Kind of start at the top with very large media to try to start filtering out some of the large particles of things. Okay, so it's going to keep out animals, it's going to keep out large plant matter. Okay, and then as the water goes down into the green layer, okay, now you're starting to get out even the smaller stuff. The water's filtering down from the top down through it. Okay, and so you're removing more and more stuff as you go along. There's a layer of charcoal. Okay, that starts to deal with some of the chemical issues. Okay, it certainly deals with odor and helps some of the clarity. And at the very bottom, okay, you've got a solid media that the water's going to pass through and pretty much collect most of the other things. This is like I said, a visual representation. It's harder to see, but I have all of this in here too. Although the one thing I forgot to add in here, in between the charcoal and the green layer, it's supposed to be a layer of sand. I wasn't thinking when I put this together. But that's what I have in here. Okay, so I have basically just a coffee filter, okay, that operates the same thing as this cotton balls that I've stuffed in here. That's the solid media that the water's going to finally pass through. Then above that, again, there's charcoal, there's a layer of sand, the green media, and then ultimately the rocks at the top. I'm going to give this a shot and see what we can do here. Does anybody want to before I... All right, I don't know if you guys can see, and if you guys want to come up, I urge you to do so. You can see, all the dirt kind of just filtering around in there. Okay. Good thing we're at a water-safe desk. This may take a moment to actually start to filter through. I'll get more as we go. Let's do this. Start there. Now, it's not super clear yet, okay? And like I said, since this is a crude thing, we go through very many steps in our water treatment plant, okay? Obviously, like I said, there's a straining process to remove the large particulates, plant matter, animal matter, that type of stuff to begin with. Then it goes through a number of chemical processes. We introduce a lot of chemicals in there to correct the pH, to bind to some of the other materials that make it through the straining process. And once it binds to those particulates, it then sinks down to the bottom. Okay, and then those are removed. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit more here. And ultimately what I want to do is take this and run it through again, because that's what we do. We kind of run it back and forth through this filter. And during that entire process while we're working at the water treatment plant, there is testing going on at every phase of the project to see, to make sure that we're getting to the standards that the government sets for us. Okay, in this case, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, to say, have we removed enough of the animal matter? Do we, have we removed, I don't even know all the things that we have to go through today. It is a laundry list of things that we have to test for and get out of the water before we can push it to the water system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this. I'm going to try running this through again, just to see if we can clean it up a little bit more. Okay, so only 2 times through, and it actually looks pretty good. I'm still not going to taste it. Still not completely sure that I'd want to. But that is our process in a nutshell. Like I said, this is very simplified. It's a very complex, multi-million-dollar plant that we have. A lot of people with chemical degrees, chemists, chemical engineering, those types of things, but they have to understand the process that goes into it. What chemicals do you need to put into the water to bind to some of these particulates to get them out and then to strain them out? How do you test? Because we have our lab where the water is tested for all of the various things, from various complex chemical compounds to basic metals, like I said, pH, all those things that go into it in order to make it safe for us to turn on the water, take a quick drink.
One thing after it goes through the filtering process at our treatment plant, we also do disinfection. So we add chlorine currently as our primary disinfectant to make water safe. It's required by the DEP, and that's one of the items that is very important to maintain in our distribution system. Now, currently at our treatment plant, we use chlorine as our primary disinfectant. We put it in before it finishes its treatment. What we are undertaking is a $70 million project to replace the primary disinfection portion of our treatment with ozone. So ozone will then oxidize and in essence assist us with disinfection on during treatment, and then at the final part, once it's completed, once the treatment's completed and we're about to inject into the distribution system, we'll add chlorine again to make sure that residual is maintained. But the big thing with ozone is it helps us deal with some of the organics, like Mike mentioned with the DNR canal. When chlorine binds with organics, it creates some disinfection byproducts. When you utilize ozone as that primary disinfection method, it reduces that, so it makes the water, in essence, better for distribution to our customers.
Mm-hmm. Is there any questions on, like I said, what's rather crude filtration system or what we do for getting the water ready to even put into our pipes?
If you're like in the wild, you just make that into like a water bottle, and that's how you drink water.
I mean, I would run it through a few more times, but yes, essentially. And obviously, given the size of what I've created here, by the end of the day, after I run this through several times, I got to throw it all out because it's no longer going to be any good. You can already see that the coffee filter that was at the base is no longer white, but it is still going to work through the remainder of the presentations we have. But yes, you're absolutely right. That's the thing. Like I said, it's just a multi-step process to try to filter out as much as possible so that it does become safe for you.
It's very similar to those trees you've seen the survival straws they'll sell at sporting goods stores. That's very similar to this process in a much smaller scale. Oftentimes they use activated carbon as the media, but this is the premise for filtration.
And everything. Right now I have it off, and what these things are is what they're called a piezometer. Okay, so the way this thing works, and Jan will correct me if I'm wrong, because Jan is our director of distribution. Once the water is prepped and ready to go into the pipes, it's his job. Everything that happens in those pipes is his responsibility. Okay. So we have a water tank in order to elevate the water and help provide system pressure. You put 1 million gallons of water way up in the air and it's going to be very heavy and push down. It's a simplified way to help push water through our water system. So that's why we've got this. And what these piezometers show is that when the system is working correctly, if you had anywhere in our system a pipe like this that was open to the air and long enough, you would see the water rise to the same level that's in the tank. Okay, so if I turn this on, it may be hard to see. Unfortunately, we ran out of the dye that we were using, and I couldn't get any more this morning. But when I turn the water on, you should see.
It just takes a little time. Goes there. This is as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can see that all of them are at. I don't know about that one. I don't know if all the valves
are closed, so it's all valved off. So that's something also as part of this is, the distribution system has valves throughout the system to allow us to do shutdowns and also isolate main breaks and isolate sections of our system for maintenance.
All right, so you said this one's closed?
Yeah. Closed.
So
this one.
Go ahead and open that one first. Let's just see. All right, so that one. All right. And it'll balance out. Just gotta make sure we keep an eye on that. Okay. So yeah, when the system is operational, actually I think if you open that, what it does is it'll get rid of some of the area. Yeah. Put some more dye. We usually put blue dye in. You can see it here. It makes it very easy to see where the water levels are in here, but you know, they're. Let's see where that one is now.
Might be a little longer.
Right. A little bit more. Okay, there we go. And of course, we got some air in the system. We don't want that. So like I said, this is, again, it's a very crude representation, but it does show you the hydraulics that go into this. This is why we have these elevated storage tanks, because there's no motor involved in this, except for a pump in there to take the water from there and put it back into here. So as long as we have the water up here, we open all the valves and everything, the water just flows. Now obviously we got to get the water up here, and we do use pumps for that, but you know, this is also a storage facility for emergency situations, fire flows. You know, when the firemen need extra water, they're going to be able to draw that rather quickly, rather than pull it from all the way from the plant. So we do want to have some of our water tanks distributed into the system as a whole.
One of the other things having a storage tank allows us to do is to pump during off-peak times. So one of the things we look at as a utility is, you know, how can we conserve funds and make sure that our customers are getting the best product for the lowest cost. So one of the things we can do to optimize that is pump during the night. So we would fill the water tank potentially at night while electricity is cheaper, where there's excess energy and we're utilizing that excess energy rather than letting it go to waste. So we'd fill it at night and then hopefully float off that tank during the day. And that would be what provides the pressure and the water for the entire daytime demands. So it's...
Any questions on this? Now, you know, in terms of general engineering, obviously there's a lot of engineering that goes into all of this. You know, starting at the water treatment plant, you know, chemical engineers, chemists, environmental engineers that are working with us to develop the systems to get rid of the contaminants that are in the water that we start with. Then we get into the water and the hydraulic engineers that help us with the water system, and in some respects construction engineering. Because, you know, we go out there, and as Jan mentioned, you know, we're replacing a lot of water pipe in our system, so we have to figure out where we can go. We have to, you know, look at the conditions that are out there, identify the conflicting utilities that we're going to have to deal with, and then get into, you know, the physical construction.
Does it not?
I think you need a haircut pretty soon.
I just cut yesterday.
Oh.
So going back to my 4th of July water outage, are there other ways that you guys could think of that I can inform the public besides social media, reverse phone calls? There's a missing link. One thing we didn't talk about, it's becoming less and less prominent to do and utilize the traditional media. But, you know, radio works effectively because you can get the message out right away. Sometimes the patch, you know, people like local news more than big news. Newspapers, that would be too late because by the time the newspaper was published the next day, people would have been out without water for hours. No, any other ways? Yeah.
I just have a question. Do you give information through like regular TV broadcasts or no?
No, we don't. That's something that used to be a little more prominent, I'd say. People would go and do more video and on news reporting. But now almost everybody's their own reporter by social media. So usually it would be on TV, probably unless there was a major crisis. Yeah, if there was a major crisis, you'd have a company spokesperson. That luckily would not be me. That would be the Vice President of Corporate Affairs. Let me see, any other questions about communications manager? There's so many other facets to this job. So like if you work for a politician, it would be, you know, it might be a press secretary. So if that's something you're interested in politics, you could be a press secretary. You could work for a major company, a public relations firm, where you have lots of different clients that you're helping build their brand, build brand awareness.
In high school, did you like see yourself doing this career? Did you see yourself doing something else?
Did I think I would be working for a water company? Certainly not. But I started out thinking I was going to the business and economics. I really I went to WVU and I started out in the business and economics school. And after a couple statistics classes and some economics classes, I was like, you know, this really isn't for me. I don't like to do the same thing every day. Like, I really enjoy that about my job. I can come in, I really have no idea what's going to be thrown out that day. And that might be terrifying to some people, but I find it very attractive. Yes?
I was going to ask, what do you dislike about your job? Like, do you have any dislikes?
Yes, same things that I love about my job I don't like. So say I'm on my way to dinner on a Friday night, and I think I'm going to have a nice time, start my weekend, but all of a sudden I get a call that there's an issue, and so instead of being able to enjoy some nice family time, I have to head back to the office and, you know, work. And sometimes, you know, you can work from home, but still, it's disruptive. And the same thing I like about it can be, like, the worst enemy. Like, you know, you just never know. Like, I have my phone in my pocket right now, and something could happen, and I could have to leave. Yes.
Speaking of that, is it common to have like older hours usually?
Yes, definitely. You never know what your work week's going to be like. Usually at my level, you don't get paid for overtime, but when you start out like a communication specialist or a coordinator, you probably are going to start out on an hourly basis and, you know, be paid for your going above and beyond overtime, over 40 hours a week. Usually never gets past 50 hours a week. That's a real bad week if I work more than 50 hours a week. So, who said they had a part-time job? Getting a part-time job? What do you do?
I work at a restaurant.
I think that's great experience. So, no matter what your job is going to be someday, working with people is interesting and hard.
It's very difficult with some people.
Yeah, that's part of the learning process. Who plays sports? Yeah, I always thought that was one of the best things that prepared me for life in general. I think sports are a microcosm of life. You like learn how to win gracefully, lose gracefully, learn how to work as a team. You learn how to work with people that you might not necessarily like or enjoy, but you have to make it work. So I always recommend that for everyone.
What sports are you playing?
Basketball, volleyball, and softball. Some time ago. And I wasn't good enough to go to college to play. Any other questions?
Maybe some
What? Okay. Let me see. I'm trying to think of what else that you guys want. Yeah, I told you we do water quality reports, financial reporting, annual reports. I get to work, I mean, I can do some very low-level graphic design, which I think is important in our job. But, you know, I'm not an Adobe Illustrator expert by any means, and I work with people to provide graphics and beautiful covers for annual reports and stuff like that. But I use, like, Canva to make, have you ever heard of that? Yeah, so you can make some cool, like, social media graphics and stuff like that, you know, for laymen like me. No. And then, I would say, like, I know a little bit about a lot of things, but I'm an expert in none of them. So one day I put my social media hat on, the next day I put my reporter hat on. I get to go out on the field with the guys and like work with them for a day in distribution, go to the plant and watch them work in treatment. I get to learn about everybody at my company. We're publicly traded, so all the financial aspects, that's very interesting if you're interested in that.
So going back to when you were talking about your time in Italy, and in particular focusing on the resume. So you said in Italy you had to have a picture of yourself on the resume as well as
your family lineage.
So and I know I'm using very broad, so is everything else the same outside of, like, in your experience with Italy? A cover letter you would need, or you didn't need that? What's included on the resume, is there differences there?
No, pretty much the same stuff was included on the resume. I mean, if you don't count the lineage. The picture's very unusual. Although I have seen, like, maybe some people doing that recently on new resumes. That seems to be a new thing. The work was different because there was a lot of, it was certainly a more relaxed pace of life and work. In Italy, you know, they took their time. You could roll in late because, you know, you had to get your cappuccino before you got to work. So it was a more relaxed workflow.